What's good, y'all? This your boy Black G92. Enjoyed my day off. Thank God. I kind of need to rest my legs and everything, man, because I was just getting worn out by that heat, man. And it was good to know that today the temperature wasn't hot as fuck. So that's an equal bonus. More than a bonus, more like a long awaited gift from the heavens above. For real. And I hope the remainder of this month, hopefully by the last week or two, going into November and shit, we get some reasonably cool to cold weather. Because fall and winter are supposed to, be the time where, things get colder and shit. So, you know what I mean? Get with the program. If you're listening, God, get with the program. But either way, right now I'm going to react to a countdown made by YouTube channel Watch Mojo. They compiled this list titled The Top 10 Horror Movies of All Time. And shoot, let's go ahead and check it out. You might have some of your faves up in there.
Oh, the horror. The horror! Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 horror movies of all time. This is part of a series of videos spanning the decades of horror cinema from the 1920s to the 2000s.
Yeah, you're gonna love this one. It's a scream, baby.
Number 10, Friday the 13th.
Not bad enough. Friday the 13th. We got a full moon, too.
What kicked off the longest-running horror franchise?
Quick little tidbit. I didn't actually see the entire Friday the 13th till maybe when I got well into college. You know what I mean? And I saw parts of it like younger and stuff, but never sat through the whole thing. But when I seen who was the actual killer, it took me by surprise. I mean, that it was actually Jason's mom that was doing all the killings, and because I was familiar with Jason with the other Friday the 13th movies, but not with the first one though. Not too familiar like with who was. I thought it was like Jason that did all the killing, but apparently that was his mom's in the first one. But either way, let's go ahead and continue watching the clip.
Of all time, this cheaply made sleeper hit was developed as a response to the success of Halloween and other holiday-themed horror flicks.
Oh, my sweet, innocent Jason.
Sean S. Cunningham created something unstoppable, though. What started off as a revenge thriller about a killer stalking sex-crazed teens at Camp Crystal Lake turned into one of the most iconic masked faces in horror, and which also spawned sequels, spin-offs, a TV series, books, comics, video games, you name it. Jason has been to hell and back many times, and it seems like nothing is going to stop him.
And been in space. They forgot to mention Jason has been in space.
Number 9, Rosemary's Baby.
We have to make a baby.
Having already given us the shocking and disturbing Repulsion, and the horror comedy The Fearless Vampire Killers earlier in the 1960s.
And you will be able to dance.
No one expected Roman Polanski to top it all off with his greatest masterpiece in 1968.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
One of the most atmospheric and poetically haunting horror films of all time, Rosemary's Baby plays on a mother's paranoia during her pregnancy.
Somebody help me!
The Oscar-winning film follows Mia Farrow with these probing questions. Can I trust my neighbors? Is my husband out to get me? Will I give birth to a demon child? Questions every mother has asked herself, right?
What have you done to him, you maniac?
Satan is his father, not Guy.
Number 8, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Man. The OG version as well as
Come on, Franklin.
shit. Not to keep on pausing, but the OG and the remake are amazing pieces of horror. You know what I mean? And man, I can just put on the OG version any day and just still be horrified. I mean, it's just that good. I was gonna leave it at that. And Tobe Hooper definitely made a Tobe Hooper. If that's how you pronounce his name, I can't think Tobe Hooper. Hooper. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Like, he really made a masterpiece.
It's gonna be a fun trip.
The early 70s were a time of cinematic experimentation, and horror directors were doing their best to push the limits of what they could show on screen. Professor turned rogue filmmaker Tobe Hooper had no studio telling him what to do. Just a camera, a couple of friends, and the hot Texan sun.
Sally, I hear something. Stop. Stop.
What they created is one of the most unrelenting and visceral projects, whose story of a family of cannibals who attack an unsuspecting group of teens was inspired by the killings of a real-life murderer. Nightmare-inducing, gritty, and way too realistic. This one should only be seen on an empty stomach. Number 7, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Director Wes Craven was inspired by the true story of a group of people who actually died while they were dreaming, and created a man of your nightmares.
This is God.
Putting a twist on the whole slasher craze, this dark fantasy series follows the demented and unrelenting Freddy Krueger, a demonic child killer and king of one-liners.
Come to Freddy.
Who's able to enter your dreams and use creative ways to end your life.
Yeah.
Something as innocent as a nap can mean death for the kids of Elm Street. Try as they might to stay awake. 12 years later, he would help rejuvenate the horror genre with the slasher classic Scream.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Halloween.
Number 6, Night of the Living Dead.
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
The little film that could, this indie masterpiece with its do-it-yourself horror aesthetic, inspired the likes of Sam Raimi and countless other future backyard home movie filmmakers.
The wave of murder which is sweeping the eastern third of the nation is being committed by creatures who feast upon the flesh of their victims.
And it also gave birth to a little something we call the modern zombie.
To this day,
With its deep social commentary and an original storyline that we've now heard hundreds of times, this sci-fi horror
Agreed.
film sees the reanimated dead begin to roam the earth, looking to eat the flesh of the living.
yeah. See, nowadays, there's about 100,000 zombie films and TV shows come out every year.
The main story revolves around a group of poor, unfortunate souls that gets trapped in a small farmhouse and is soon surrounded by the undead. Lock up tight.
That a ghoul can be killed by a shot in the head or a heavy blow to the skull.
Number 5, Dracula. One of the most iconic big screen portrayals of one of the most iconic villains of all time makes the top 5 of our horror movies of all time list.
I bid you welcome.
Nosferatu was taking over the world, and Universal Studios decided to adapt the play that already had Bela Lugosi in the lead.
Children of the night. What music they make.
While the studio also released the equally iconic Frankenstein film that same year, there's no ignoring the fact that there have been hundreds of Draculas that have graced our screens in the last 100 years, and
It's so
people
true.
today will still do a Bela Lugosi impression when pretending to be the king of vampires.
Your
Man,
will
shoot.
is strong.
Like with zombie films,
Van
you see thousands of films based on
Although
Dracula,
Christopher
or
Lee's
vampires.
reimagining, starting with 1958's horror of Dracula, is a close second, Lugosi's eerie gaze and hypnotizing voice will never be forgotten.
Indeed.
Put out that cross.
Number 4, Halloween.
Oh man.
Masked killers were big in the 70s. Audiences demanded more blood and gore, and they needed faceless monsters they couldn't empathize with.
What's the boogeyman?
Enter John Carpenter's stroke of genius, Halloween. What later became the prototype for every slasher film since, and is today considered a dark masterpiece. Started out as an idea for a cheapo film about a psychotic murderer stalking babysitters. But in the brilliant hands of Carpenter and Deborah Hill, where we follow Michael Myers returning to Haddonfield to finish up his murder spree, you get one of the most profitable indie films ever made.
Iconic. So iconic.
Number 3. The Shining.
Wendy, I'm home.
Master filmmaker Stanley Kubrick has successfully turned every genre into cinematic art. Comedy, drama, war film, sci-fi, historical epic.
They had to resort to cannibalism in order to stay alive.
Which is why people anxiously awaited to see what he would do with horror.
I must be losing my mind.
He took another master's source material and turned Stephen King's already classic novel into what was hailed as a masterpiece in modern horror.
You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Unforgettable performances, iconic imagery and dialogue, stunning locations, ominous camera work, Jack Nicholson's descent into insanity boils ever so slowly below the surface, that people can only stare in stunned terror and pray it never happens to them.
Here's Johnny.
Number 2,
let's play it back. Let's play it back. That's such iconic and iconic and parody line of all time, man. We got to play it back.
Camera work, Jack Nicholson's descent into insanity boils ever so slowly below the surface, that people can only stare in stunned terror and pray it never happens to them.
Here's Johnny.
Number 2, The Exorcist. What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Your mother sucks cocks in hell, Paris, you faithless slime.
Take a brilliant director and cast, amazing source material, experts in sound, editing, lighting, and unforgettable special effects, and what do you get? The most iconic images in horror cinema. An exercise in terror that dares you to keep watching. And a film that had audience members throwing up and passing out. Meet little Reagan, who shouldn't be playing with Ouija boards. She's just a kid, who now has a demon inside her.
How long are you planning to stay in Reagan?
Until she rots and lies stinking in the earth.
Get ready to never sleep again.
The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Before we dig into our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chump some of this shit.
I love you, Mom. Dad. I'm so sorry.
Groovy.
One of my favorite movies.
Clear.
Number 1, Psycho. This is a prime example of an established director taking on disturbing macabre material and turning it into gold. How does one follow up brilliant thrillers like Vertigo and North by Northwest? Give the audience the shock of their lives. A stunning vision of unrelenting terror, Hitchcock went full-on horror for this twisted tale of mommy issues, brutality, abusive insanity, and sexual violence. And yet, it was all done with such style and grace.
We're all in our private traps.
Checking into Norman Bates Motel would be the most fatal mistake of your life, but it's a must-watch
name like
horror
that?
film.
Yeah, you probably want to think twice.
And while he'd also give us the terrifying and suspenseful The Birds 3 years later, there's no denying the impact and influence of this psychological thriller on the horror and slasher genres today.
They'll see and they'll know, and they'll say, why, she wouldn't even harm a fly.
Do you agree with our list?
Yeah, sure.
What do you think is the best horror movie of all time? For more horrific top 10s published every day. Be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
Tequila is my lady! My lady! Come on in, guys. Come on in. Come on in. You're welcome.
Alright, that was that. The top 10 horror movies of all time. And she had quite a few movies I've seen already, and a few of them that have seen adaptation for, but not the original, the OG ones. Mainly the Dracula, and there was another one that I've only seen the remake. Oh yeah, Night of the Living Dead. I only saw the remakes and other adaptations of those films, not the actual original movies themselves. And there's a few of them that I haven't seen yet, but I would say it's a pretty interesting list. Good little compilation of like the best of the best from all the masters of horror in cinema. And now, let me know in the comment section if you've seen your faves, and also let me know what other movie countdowns you want me to react to. And and I'd say another thing: this countdown is perfect for the Halloween season. Black G about to sign off. Holla at your boy. Peace.